October 17th, 2020. This was a big day for Super Metroid players and Romhack enthusiasts alike. We all woke up to quite possibly one of the most iconic ROM hacks of any video game ever. The legend of ROM hacking had done it again. Metroid ROM hacker Digital Mantra, or D-Man for short, best known for classic hacks like Eris and Cliffhanger, dropped one hell of a bombshell on the community, and I don't think we really knew what we were getting ourselves into. The hack in question is, of course, the illustrious Super Metroid Vitality. I had a discussion with D-Man, and he said that Vitality took exactly 4 years to make, and he took very specific steps and precise measures to create this monstrous hack. Everything had to be perfect, he said. Even if it meant asking friends of his in the hacking community several times to rewrite code for him. Again, it all had to be perfect for his vision to come to life. And if you've ever played this hack, you'll know that he succeeded. Vitality has storytelling elements in it that really haven't been executed in any other SM hack ever made. The fact that this game won Best Aesthetics, Best Exploration, and Best Overall Hack of 2020 says a lot. But with such a titan of a hack, there's a lot to unpack. It all starts with Samus Aran being contracted by the Galactic Federation to head to planet Auriga to investigate an installation that had recently happened. During her investigation, the Federation had outsourced space pirates to the planet to cover their own tracks and to overtake the operation. The reason they sent these pirates to Auriga is far more sinister than they probably care to admit. The operation was to obtain Samus DNA and infuse it with Chozo DNA and other creatures native to the planet to create the ideal army of super soldiers. Whether the Federation succeeded or not, well, you'll have to play for yourself. The game's lore draws a massive inspiration from the 1997 cult classic film Alien Resurrection, starring one-woman killing machine, Ripley, as portrayed by Sigourney Weaver. Vitality takes Samus through a torrent of mental challenges by making her face grotesque creatures that strongly resemble herself, making her question everything around her. Along Samus's investigation, she stumbles upon multiple different laboratories that seem to be dabbling with DNA manipulation and cloning, slowly but surely unfolding a sickening story right in the palms of her own hands. The story of Vitality is nothing to take lightly either. It actually deals with some real-life themes related to mental health, disassociation, anxiety attacks, and psychosis. You see this when you boot up the game and it says Rated R. In fact, this is the closest thing to a Super Metroid movie that I've ever seen. Allow me to take you on the absolutely wicked, yet insanely stunning journey of Super Metroid Vitality. Let's start with how Vitality plays and feels. Samus's movement in Vitality is somewhat of a vanilla hybrid. It plays pretty much exactly like the original, but adds one vital movement option: the ability to respin. This allows for easier times wall jumping, since if you miss a jump or break out of a spin, you can immediately correct yourself and get back into a spin by simply tapping jump. A nice touch that D-Man added was the removal of item fanfares and a changed HUD that indicates what item you've just picked up. This makes traversing the planet and overall exploration feel seamless, because you're not taking the 7 seconds to hear the fanfare every single time you pick up an item. This helps keep the player immersed and does the game a lot of favors by not interrupting some of the more tense or scary parts of the hack with unnecessary jingles. The ergonomic HUD changes are very welcoming and keep this 28-year-old title feeling fresh. A huge part of the gameplay that's changed is how D-Man chose to line up the story beats and events. The world of Vitality is ever evolving. During times of plot advancement, you'll find that the world changes to reflect what's happening in the story. It keeps you on your toes and really gets you to pay attention to the world around you. For example, upon exiting an area in Aklis, Samus stops dead in her tracks and gets a message that says the communication with her gunship is down. Later, when you come across your ship, you'll find that a giant pile of boulders toppled down from above and crushed it. But with this, a new path is opened. This method of progression and storytelling branches from the original and really helps drive the narrative that D-Man is trying to set. With that said, The world that Digital Mantra built for Vitality is one that's quite interesting, and each area actually has its own lore surrounding it. Planet Auriga is split into 6 major areas: Pendulumoda, Chornobog, Aklis, Taklakora, Andevald, and Elsek. Each area plays a pivotal part in tying the world of Vitality together. Pendulumoda is a grim, sandy, sewer-esque set of caverns where it seems nature has taken its course over many years. This region is highly rich in gold ore deposits. Indigenous Chozo often refer to this area simply as Moda. Gold mined from this region is used by the Chozo via allomancy, a metapsychotic practice of mind under metal influence. With the gold, they can momentarily peer into the future to transcribe their souls into the atmosphere. Although side effects are fatal if the meditation outlasts the half-life of the allomantic metal. They call this death burst brain, and most elders consider this an indulgent fatality not worth pity. While exploring Moda, you can actually come across one such Chozo that suffered this cataclysmic fate. While this area seems built by nature and erosion, the western half of Moda's temple was refashioned as a cloning lab, testing the local Omu. Most subjects failed and became grotesque blobs of skin, rot, and flesh. The only functional clone was callously named Specimen D, which is the main boss of this region. Since the passing and imprisonment of most Chozo, space pirates now heavily occupy Moda. Chornobog is the bottom section of the Great Tree Yggdrasil, which is so large that its canopy reaches Auriga's ozone layer. Its lush green landscapes and plant-infested floors make Chornobog really something to look at. The area is composed of a complex series of tree roots and surrounding blue soil caverns. Giant roots from Yggdrasil burrow into the shallow lake beds of southern Chornobog, constantly feeding the tree as it towers over the planet and harbors its very own habitat for the local creatures. The water that seeps up into its roots are from Andevald's water treatment facilities. This area's boss is named Kolos, a 40-foot tall reptile which lays eggs that take decades to hatch. Kolos is represented by Kraid and fights very similarly. Aklis is the area that best represents Norfair. It was once a sacred ground of temples used by the Chozo for tectonic meditation to regulate Auriga's volcanic eruptions. Over time, this area was occupied by pirates hired by the Federation to harness lava and mine minerals for the cloning pod production. The boss of this region is a gigantic golden dragon covered in volcanic ash and soot, as portrayed by Ridley. This dragon was worshipped by the Andevald sect of Chozo, and they erected a statue in its reverence. The statue serves as the game's, quote, Taurian entrance, making Ridley theoretically the only required boss to complete Vitality, although the main story beats don't allow other bosses to be skipped. Taklakora is the top of the Great Tree Yggdrasil. A pirate outpost was constructed within its canopy to research cross-DNA cloning experiments. This area is riddled with prisons that the Chozo now reside in. The Chozo transmutate their pain into deep meditations, causing the canopy branches to grow abnormally into twists and knots. This area's boss is represented by a monster named Specimen C, which is an experiment by the pirates that fuses the DNA of Samus and a Chozo into one blasphemous being. This is one of D-Man's most horrific creations, straight from an H.R. Geiger art piece. Blood, tubes, and reproductive parts are crudely combined into a living but unthinking being. The Great Andevald is a water treatment center that has been situated under Chornobog for thousands of years and is now, you guessed it, occupied by space pirates. The Chozo that lived in Andevald were considered perverse, engaging in occult meditations and rituals in an effort to purify the toxic radioactive waters into pure aqua. Andevald was aptly looked down upon by neighboring Chozo regions Moda and Aklis. However, they relied on its water supply, so they chose to keep to themselves and let the rituals continue. The pirates that were hired by the Federation set up bases to produce plasma for the cloning pods, which have reversed and tainted centuries of treated water pumped out by this region. And finally, we come to the game's final area, Elsek, a subterranean super geo-city that evacuated its citizens hundreds of years ago when an eruption in Aklis posed a danger. A corporation by the name of Weyland-Yutani took advantage of this land and used its various laboratories and prime transit systems to create new technologies and transport goods without the Federation being any the wiser. In fact, the Galactic Federation is unaware that the Great City exists and thinks that after the citizens evacuated, that it was destroyed and long forgotten. It's claimed to be Auriga's biggest secret and proves to be incredibly lucrative for Weyland-Yutani. Elsic also holds the most gruesome terrors and really showcases how dark, demented, and out-of-hand experimentation has gotten over the years. The main boss in this area is a Crocomire-like hell monster that is a jumbled mess of Samus clones fused together, and its only goal is to kill you to prove that it's the superior being. Train cars full of Samus clones can also be found, and this pushes Samus into a palpable panic attack. It seems our finely tuned galactic bounty hunters still can be affected by atrocity after all. A clear juxtaposition from the cold, clinical pirates that have taken over the planet. This commentary on coldness, killing, and loss of humanity is really noticed when Samus, after murdering clones of herself, forces the player to stop as she loses control over her emotions. She panics, she falls to the ground, she can't go on. She's different from these clones, isn't she? And in the end, you don't really know. The ambiguity keeps the player guessing all the way to the end of the credits. This scene best relates to a clip from Alien Resurrection, where Ripley visits a cloning facility and sees a mangled version of herself on a table, begging her to kill it. You can tell that Vitality is a love letter to Alien in the horror genre, and I, for one, have fallen even more in love with the genre because of it. Digital Mantra clearly took a lot of pride in the look of this ROM hack. From the multi-layered sprites to the spaciousness and sheer size of rooms compared to the original Super Metroid, Vitality is simply a pretty game. Each room has you pausing to take in the details, and no two rooms are the same. Waterfalls, overgrown statues, rocky molten lava, and underwater enclosures are all ready for Samus to explore. But it's not just beauty on this planet. There's an eeriness that's in every frame. D-Man accurately captures unsettling environments through the picturesque dilapidation. What happened to this planet? The Shozos were clearly evolved enough to make all these structures, but yet only corpses and decay remains. Everything is customized to fit the narrative. In development, D-Man went through tens of hundreds of iterations when curating the world of Vitality, and I think he ended up with perfection. During my conversation with him, he stated that he felt a little guilty for all the favors he had to ask of his friends in the community, because he had to change, tweak, or flat out redo certain custom sprites and events that had to happen. But in the end, you'll see that it was all worth it, and his vision became a reality. There's very particular things that can happen when you die as well. When you reach 0 health and Samus perishes, that's it. You're dead. And with that, when you reload, you're actually a clone. From then on, you can notice things start to change. In some save stations, you'll find your own dead body from the previous Samus you were just playing, or other DNA-clustered monstrosities that appear in rooms or form right in front of you. There are actually 5 different save stations that have these little Easter eggs. Be sure to play around and find which ones have them. But hands down, one of the coolest and most interesting events that can trigger in this entire hack is when you stumble upon the highly volatile, radioactive well in Andevald and drown in the toxic waters. This is an intentional trap set by D-Man and has some really unique effects. When you take your inevitable death and reload your save, you're in a completely new area as a new clone, surrounded by flayed skin hanging on drying racks, which leads to the discovery of a few new items and eventually an exit. It's quite terrifying, but it's such a cool way to introduce the cloning process if you hadn't gotten a game over up to this point. What's even more interesting is the clone counter at the end of the credits, which represents how many game overs you got. It's just so cool to think that Vitality actually rewards the player for losing in some regard. So, as always, the question stands. Stun, should I play Super Metroid Vitality? And the answer I have for you is absolutely yes. Vitality quickly became one of my favorite hacks of all time and really brought to the table what was thought to not be possible with the SM engine. From the sci-fi horror feel to the very real themes of mental health and anxiety, to its insanely beautiful lore-filled regions, Vitality could quite possibly be considered a ROM hacking masterpiece. Its decent difficulty mixed with its wonderful exploration and storytelling paves the way for the player to really get engrossed in each and every aspect Vitality has to offer. Vitality has been a smash success with the Metroid community too. It's seen its fair share of speedruns, more notably from my good friend Strizer, and Let's Plays by bigger members in the community like Oats and Goats. It's a ROM hack that anyone can sink their teeth into, and I 10,000% recommend anyone give this game a shot. I hope Vitality inspires more creativity in the community because it truly shows what's capable in a hack. Digital Mantra, you, my friend, have done it again. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Stunt, and I'll see you next mission.